Good afternoon, everyone. 3 o'clock here in the UK, and it's Tuesday, the 9th of February, and the American market running now for about half an hour. And For the first day, and I think six now, market's well off. And As you can see, the Dow is in fact down 90 points odd. The last time I looked, the S&P had pulled back about 8 points, and for the first time in a long time, the declines are slightly higher than the advances. So let's just have a look at the chart of the overall market, which I think I've got open. Yeah, this is the VectorVest composite of the US market over the last 6 months, and you can see what it's done since November. The longest term measure of the trend on VectorVest, called confirmed calls, they're up and have been up since I think the 11th of November. The medium term is called the DEW, that's the medium term market timing system, and it's been longer. It's been long in the market since about a week before the long term trend changed. Look at the quality of these signals at the bottom here. And if I put up the short-term measure of the trend, known as the primary wave, you can see that's a little bit noisier, but nevertheless, the primary wave has been up since I think Tuesday last week. At the minute, this market it looks a little bit overbought in the short term, and if I get rid of the signals now and blow this up to a 3-month chart, for those of you that are fib analysts, it's sitting at a 1.618 extension of the pullback, and that is a measure of a market that's run quite a long way in the short term. Now it can go much further. It can go to the 2.618 extension of the pullback quite easily, but nevertheless, those of you that are short-term traders, you must just note that this market in the short term is very overbought. Now if we have a look at the longer term chart, and I reload the VectorVest template that looks at overbought and oversold levels on a longer term, that's 6 months chart. This is the VectorVest proprietary MTI, and it's sitting up at 1.72, and that is a mega overbought area. Always best to be buying your shares when it's right down under 1 here. So this is in overbought, but been overbought for a long time. All right, so and the buy-sell ratio, the number of shares on a buy divided by the number of shares on a sell, sitting up at 11.17, which is also a mega overbought level. So in the short term, over a few days, this market looks overbought. In the longer term, it's exceptionally overbought, what I refer to as in the mega overbought situation. So short-term traders, well, watch your stop losses very carefully indeed. Maybe thinking of taking some profits, getting your stop loss to entry, let a good bit of the position run as yet with tight stop losses. For God's sake, don't be shorting the market, trying to pick a top and bottom pickers become cotton pickers. There'll be plenty of time to short markets when the market in fact tells us that it's falling. At the moment, it's shouting that it's rising. So don't do anything dumb, please, with the greatest respect and deference. My positions, Gravity is going nicely. Zoom is going very nicely. Amazon is doing its best. Square had a cracking day yesterday, and so did PLTR. DraftKings pushing on a $64 target, and Peloton going the right way. NEO going the right way. I'm reasonably pleased, and I looked around earlier for something else to buy, but they were all so all the ones I looked at were so overbought in the short term, I couldn't see anything. That's Gravity, and as you can see, I have there's a trend line there. There's a 62% retracement at an old high, and it ran stop losses 2 or 3 times before this falling wedge was complete. So that looks a pretty good setup to me, and and I wouldn't be at all surprised to see that getting to $200 quite easily from here. So as I say, the overall market is overbought. That's Zoom, and I really like Zoom. There's a falling wedge in this as well, but I really like the volume pattern, and as you can see, as it broke the wedge on big volume, that was great. Went sideways and falling volume, and that big day that pushed up through $400 happened on rising volume. That's my target at about 550 on Zoom. We shall see. That's Amazon, and earnings per share rising. I live in a portered block here in West London, and the porter's a little fella called Giuseppe, and when I went downstairs earlier we couldn't see him for all the Amazon boxes, so he was completely submerged in Amazon boxes, the poor chap. So their earnings, look at them, just going up 36 to 46. So I'm hoping that this can break out. We shall see. That's Square. It's had a great run. Hasn't quite got to the 1.618 extension, but I noted that it found some resistance on the 1.27. Next level will be 1.27. It's a very famous fib number. For those of you that are fib analysts, the next level will be 1.618, where yours truly has already calculated target, and that target is on my market maker, and if it gets there, I'll get out. To work out the target, you take that minus that, multiply by 1.618, and add it to the low. That's it. All right, simple as that. That's PLTR. Great day yesterday. With any luck, that's going to follow through. And that's DraftKings. That's that old high. Came off the old high. I think if it can get through the 65 level, this thing, or 64, 65 level, this thing will motor. That's Peloton. I thought I was away to the races there. It didn't happen, but that's just a beautiful spring formation. Let's see how she goes. And Neo, you little beauty, textbook spring, came down, hit that resistance, became support once, goes up, can't makes a new high, comes back, runs every stop in town, and then starts to move up. I have no idea what's going to happen next, but that's a high probability setup. It's a pure technical play. I know the fundamentals on it are not great. All the gold is still in the ground, to use an old mining metaphor. So that's what I've been doing. I'm sure there's other shares out there, but they all look a tad overbought to me. I've been thinking of buying Logitech now for the last few weeks, in fact, and I should have, and it's up significantly, and that came out of the VectivS Midas Touch watch list. That share that I sold too early, FLGT, just keeps heading north with huge velocity, and I sold it too early as well. What can you do? Maybe in another 40 years I'll get this right. So in the UK, we've got also a very positive situation. This is Monday night's close. VectivS advocates buying safe undervalued stocks that are rising in price at this time. So the short-term measure of the trend is up, the longer-term measure of the trend is up, and we've got a green light in the price column of the color guard telling us that the price of a composite up day over day and week over week. Not quite as strong as we would get in the US. The buy-sell ratio still pushing up to a mega overbought situation at 1.42. Our research department tell me it needs to get up to about 1.65 on the MTI before they consider that overbought. The buy-sell ratio is in mega overbought territory at 5.31. Okay, now that's what I've been looking at, and I'm reasonably pleased with them all, to tell you the truth. They haven't done that much, and maybe I could have made more money by chopping around, but I decided to try and run this for the medium to long term. And I'm reasonably pleased. Tristel is going well. This GYS is actually on my spec list as well, but it's in here as well for some reason. It's pushing very strongly now on this £13.50 level. Came back here and that angst, that GameStop angst, and it's now pushing up very nicely through that level. Then we're away. Sylvania is going, and somebody emailed me to tell me it's up again today. JD Sports, a lot of really good corporate news out of JD Sports. Off a little bit today. And Bellway, good numbers, and it pushed up a pound today. And again, folks, this is essentially the same setup. It's not as strong as we had in Neo and in Peloton, but it is one of Richard Wyckoff's spring formations. Resistance, comes back, goes up again, can't get through, comes back, runs all the stops and moves up. This clearly, there was a line in the sand up here, and it broke up through that level today, I believe. So with any luck, we'll have fresh air above us. Overhead resistance is gone. Wouldn't that be great? Games Workshop worried an awful lot of people, and clearly it's trading above the VectorVest valuation, and the fundamentals are good, and it came back and came off. If I blow this up, there's a trend line here, and the low of the day yesterday, folks, came to that 78% retracement. Whether you believe the fib stuff or not, or whether you believe it's sent down by God, or whether you believe it's in fact self-fulfilling, an awful lot of traders follow it, and I think there was some very smart money buying into the market yesterday at that confluence between the trend line and the 78% retracement, because that marked the low of the day to the tick, and then we had an outside day or a hammer formation just there. And again, somebody emailed me to tell me that it's up a tick or two today. So that's looking to me as if we're going to have another push on that 120 level. As I said last week, folks, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see that fail. They rarely break on the third attempt. They normally break on the fourth attempt. So up to here, a pullback for a day or two, and then a push through that 120 level. I added to the share here, and if I see a push north here, I'll consider adding to the share again, although that gives you that wonderful problem to have, that you've got too much of your little nest egg in the one stock. What a grand wee problem to have, isn't it? The gold market, I hope, has found a bottom, and I think I've got the chart. That's bullion, and at our Q&A we've got some wonderful traders. With a young man called Chris who's very, very experienced, and he spotted this yesterday as a candle pattern known as an abandoned baby, I think. I'm not strong on the candle patterns as maybe as I should be, but this had pushed up and it's pulled back in 3 waves. It went up in 5, not very pretty, but went up in 5. It's pulled back in 3. Again, for the fibs, that low is an exact 78% of this, and my little model told me that there's a bottom coming in gold in the next week. So when I spoke to the VectorVest regulars yesterday, I felt maybe there was more downside, but we're not far off a major low in gold here. If this is a low, I'm not saying this is going to be the one that allows the market to take off to my 2200 level, but I think that there'll be a fairly decent move in gold here. I'm still holding 2 gold stocks, Polymetal and Pan African Resources. I'm well pleased with them. In the sell-off that we've seen in gold, and just remember, folks, if this was a $100 sell-off here, those shares didn't budge. And similarly, the GDX, the American tracker, in fact has outperformed the bullion market in the last few weeks, and that's saying to me that there's no sellers of gold stocks out there. So sooner or later, this is without a doubt, in my humble opinion, a corrective pattern. That's an impulse pattern, and sooner or later this is going to break. But if you know gold as well as I do, it doesn't give you money without a wee bit of a fight. So I'm hoping that this is the time that it's going to break. If I see this moving up and forming a nice rising bottom here, then I'll be tempted to add into some more gold stocks, and maybe I'll be in a position to talk about those towards the end of the week. Now, in the UK, I have a spec list as well. Here we go. And I bought three of them. I bought ATYM, which is a copper play, and as you know, I've been rattling on about copper to anybody who listened to me for a long time. I think the commodity stocks will be the bond market for income over the next 2 or 3 years. So that's a small little company. It broke up very nicely. GYS, that gaming company I've just spoken about, and 4D, outstanding looking chart. So I've bought all of those. I was looking for an entry into AAZ as well, but I decided to wait until the gold market confirms. So if we look at those, these are specs. That's Telemining, and you know, it's just such a classic chart, isn't it? There's the moving averages, and folks, if you get a low, and that low is a mile above the last significant high, that's what old Charles Dow said in 1880 constituted a fast trend, and invariably breakouts works. That was Dow's way of actually calculating momentum. Similarly, those lows were much, much higher than the last significant highs, which I think were there or down there. And similarly, when it broke, it went with gusto. So this is a manifestation of a very strong trend, and in those strong trends, breakouts tend to work, and I was quite happy with that, especially as it happened on nice big volume. That's that GOIS that we spoke about a second ago. It looks very good to me. And this is 4D Pharma. Now, what I know about this technology is dangerous. Although I've read a little bit about it, but I didn't really understand much of it, to tell you the truth. Well outside my level or my area of competence. Resistance, support, goes up, comes down, runs those. That's my area of competence. That's a Wyckoff spring. Then springs, and it pulls back in a textbook flag, and now it's going again. I bought a few just as it broke out there. I'm very positive on Invictus buy recommendation. As it broke out, folks, you can see this volume rising into it, but just read healthcare products. They've got huge aspirations in the US. So proceed with care. Proceed with care, folks. That's why it's on the spec list. I'm looking very strongly at AAZ. I'm looking very strongly at Bushveld Minerals, and I was going to buy some Phoenix Copper, but the copper price has been racing up, and this thing refused to move with it. And that put me off a little bit. So if you've got a really market that's really running fast like copper, the Anglo price was up hugely yesterday, as were all the miners. The BlackRock World Mining Investment Trust up 5% on the day nearly, and this thing in fact hardly moved at all. That put me off a little bit, but I am watching it, and Bushveld Minerals very carefully indeed. So I hope this helped, folks. Just remember, let's go back to the American market if I can find it. There we are. The Dow's 31,313. Everything is still positive. And if I have a look at the S&P, if I can find it. There we go. There's the S&P, and as you can see, the VectorVest composite stronger than the S&P, and the composite has got to that 1.618 extension, whereas the S&P itself hasn't quite got there. And that's been a characteristic of the last few weeks, where the small cap stocks have outperformed the Dow and also outperformed the S&P 500. In the short term, markets overbought. I'm not saying for a second that there's going to be a reversal. What I am saying is that if when they get to this level of being overbought, there's a good chance of a 3 to 5 day pullback. On a more macro measure, the American market is in a mega overbought situation. That mega overbought situation can certainly run for many months, and there are many people saying that it can easily run into May. Nobody knows, folks. So all you've got to do is just watch the front page of VectorVest. It'll tell you exactly what's going on, and for the moment, and do your best to try and live in the present moment. If you're an end of day trader like me, in the stock market that is, then your present moment is a daily bar, and at the moment the daily bars are telling us that to take a deep breath and hang in there, and I'm reasonably pleased with what's going on. Probably should have been more aggressive, but last Monday it didn't look that good, so it would be great to see a huge break in Amazon. Folks, thanks very much indeed, and I'll do another one of these before the end of the week. Bye bye.